Hey everyone, and welcome back.
Today, we are taking a deep dive into something that has really got everyone talking.
The wild ride of Trump media stock and what it might be telling us about the 2024 election.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah, it is.
Our sources for this deep dive are two articles, both from October 28th,
Okay.
one from Forbes, titled Truth Social Stock Jumps 20%. As Trump's betting odds rise Trump net worth up $3.8 billion this month.
And another from CNBC.
DJT Trump Media soars after Madison Square Garden rally.
Got it.
So are investors just really into Truth Social, or could this be about something bigger?
Let's find out.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Because when we look at what's happening with Trump Media and Technology Group,
Or TMTG.
its stock has been on a tear recently.
It has.
Forbes reports it jumped 20% to $47 on Monday.
The highest it's been since June.
Wow.
CNBC tells us that surge actually puts it even higher than the peak back in July.
After the near assassination attempt on Trump.
That's a serious climb.
And Forbes points out it's not just a blip.
We're talking a 200% increase over the past month.
Wow.
CNBC does mention a dip back in September.
When it fell below $12 a share.
But clearly it's bounced back big time.
So what's behind this sudden surge?
Well, both articles seem to agree that it's not necessarily about groundbreaking business moves.
Or big news coming out of TMTG itself.
Instead, they point to a potential connection between this stock rally and the shifting landscape of the 2024 election.
Okay, so how exactly does a social media company tie into election predictions?
Think of it this way.
A lot of investors seem to see Trump Media as a way to essentially bet on Trump's chances.
So it's less about the company's performance.
And more about investor confidence in a potential Trump victory.
That's what CNBC's analysts are suggesting.
They say it's driven by retail investors.
Who are basically everyday people buying stock.
And many of them seem to be enthusiastic Trump supporters.
To them, the stock is like a direct line to supporting his political future.
That's pretty interesting.
Almost like a political statement through investing.
But are there any actual numbers to back up the idea that Trump's odds are improving?
Both articles mention 538's election model,
Which now gives Trump a 54% chance of winning the 2024 election.
up from 42% just a month ago,
Then there's the poly market betting platform.
where Trump's odds have jumped from 48% to a whopping 66% in the same time period.
Those are pretty significant jumps.
So let's say you're an investor who believes those predictions.
And sees those odds increasing.
Buying into Trump Media might feel like a pretty good bet.
Exactly.
It's like they're thinking,
If Trump wins, his company probably benefits.
so my investment will too.
And that brings us to something else that both articles highlight.
The impact this has had on Trump's personal wealth.
Right, because it's not just about the stock going up.
It's about how much of that company Trump actually owns.
Exactly.
And it turns out he owns a significant chunk,
Forbes says 57% of TMTG.
which translates to about $5.5 billion of his estimated $7.5 billion fortune.
They report that Monday's surge alone added a cool $900 million to its net worth.
Wow, that's a lot of money to make in a single day.
CNBC tells us his stake at Monday's peak was worth almost $5.4 billion.
Over half of his total estimated net worth.
And to put that in perspective.
That's roughly a $4 billion increase since those late September lows we talked about earlier.
So while there's all this talk about the stock and the election.
Let's remind everyone about what Trump Media and Truth Social actually are.
Right. Because it's easy to get caught up in the numbers.
And forget about the company itself.
Both articles take us back to the beginning.
Reminding us that this whole thing wasn't exactly a smooth launch.
Yeah, didn't it take forever for them to even start trading publicly?
It did.
It was a lengthy process.
Spanning about 2.5 years.
It involved a reverse merger.
Basically a way for a private company to go public.
With something called a blank check company.
In this case, Digital World Acquisition Corp.
It wasn't until March of this year that TMTG actually began trading independently.
Okay, so they've been out there for a while now.
But what are they actually doing?
Well, CNBC mentions they recently launched a separate streaming app,
Called Truth Plus.
trying to expand beyond just the social media platform.
They also had a bit of a shakeup with their COO resigning.
As for Trump himself,
Forbes notes that while he became eligible to sell his shares last month,
he stated he has no plans to do so.
so it seems like he's still very much invested
Literally and figuratively.
in this venture.
All this definitely paints a picture of a company in motion.
But is it really worth all this hype?
Because some experts are looking at these stock prices and scratching their heads.
Yeah, Forbes brings in some voices who consider the company's valuation inflated.
especially compared to other social media companies.
What makes them say that?
Is this just a gut feeling?
They're looking at the cold, hard numbers.
Trump Media generated just $1.6 million in revenue during the first 6 months of 2024.
You compare that to other players in the social media world.
Reddit brought in $524 million.
And Snap pulled in a massive $2.4 billion during the same period.
Hold on, they're making that much less than Reddit and Snap.
Something doesn't add up here.
Exactly.
And here's the kicker.
Despite that huge difference in revenue,
Trump Media's market valuation is in the same ballpark as Reddit and Snap.
both of which are valued between $13 and $17 billion.
So it really raises the question,
Is this valuation based on actual business performance?
or is it something else entirely?
Okay, so we've got this side of the story.
Where some financial experts are waving red flags about the company's actual value,
But then there's this other side,
where investors seem to be riding a wave of enthusiasm.
and maybe even a bit of political fervor.
It's like two different worlds colliding.
On one hand, you have the traditional financial metrics.
And on the other hand, you have this almost emotional investment driven by belief in a political figure,
It makes you wonder if we're witnessing a new kind of investing.
where the stock market becomes a battleground for political allegiances.
It's certainly a possibility.
And it raises all sorts of questions about the potential for manipulation,
And how it could impact not just the markets.
but also the election itself.
That's a whole other can of worms we need to open.
But before we get there,
Let's take a closer look at some of the recent events that might be fueling this investor excitement.
because it doesn't seem like it's all happening in a vacuum,
Right.
because actions speak louder than words.
And there have been some pretty significant events that might explain why investors are feeling so bullish on Trump.
And by extension, his company.
Expert speaker. So you mentioned some key events that could be driving investor excitement.
Yeah.
What exactly are we talking about here?
Well, CNBC points to Trump's recent rally at Madison Square Garden
Which drew a massive crowd.
and really seemed to energize his base,
It definitely presented an image of strength and momentum.
which likely resonated with investors who see him as a winner.
And if those investors are already inclined to believe in Trump,
Right.
they're probably more likely to buy into the idea that his company will succeed too.
Exactly.
It's a bit like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
The more people believe in him,
The more they invest and the higher the stock goes.
which then reinforces their belief.
CNBC even shared examples of social media posts,
From Truth Social users celebrating the stock surge.
almost like a victory lap.
But it's not all just hype and rallies.
We have to talk about the elephant in the room.
CNBC's concerns about the potential for manipulation in these election betting markets.
That's a crucial point.
And it raises some serious questions about how these markets operate.
And whether they can be trusted as accurate reflections of public sentiment.
They give the example of a single French national who managed to build a massive pro-Trump position on Polymarket.
Using multiple accounts.
Wait, so one person could potentially skew the entire market?
That sounds pretty alarming.
It is.
Because if someone can artificially inflate a candidate's odds,
It creates a perception of momentum that might not actually exist.
imagine seeing those inflated numbers.
And thinking,
Wow, everyone's betting on this guy.
maybe I should too.
It could create a bandwagon effect.
That influences other bettors.
And potentially even voters.
That's a pretty scary thought.
It feels like we're venturing into some ethically murky territory here.
Definitely.
And it highlights the need for transparency and oversight in these prediction markets,
To ensure they're not being manipulated for personal gain.
or to influence the outcome of an election.
Remember, we're not just talking about abstract numbers here,
These markets are increasingly being seen as indicators of public opinion.
and could potentially sway voter behavior.
It all circles back to that idea we touched on earlier.
The blurring of lines between financial markets and political sentiment.
Exactly.
And it's not just about betting markets.
We're also seeing it with the way people are investing in Trump media.
It's becoming a proxy for political support
And that raises some fascinating questions about the future of political campaigns.
and how they might be financed,
It's like we're entering uncharted territory.
where traditional financial analysis takes a backseat to emotional investment.
And political loyalty.
That's a great way to put it.
And it's something we need to be paying close attention to.
Because it could have significant implications for how we view the markets
How we participate in elections.
and how we understand the relationship between money and power.
in the digital age.
So where do we go from here?
This feels like a much bigger conversation than just one company's stock price.
It absolutely is.
And as much as we'd love to have all the answers,
This is really just the beginning of the conversation.
what we've tried to do in this deep dive is equip you with the information and insights to start asking the right questions.
We've laid out the facts,
The contrasting perspective.
the potential implications.
Now it's up to you to connect the dots and decide what you believe.
We believe in your ability to do that.
Yeah, it really is a lot to process.
It is.
We've gone from a stock surge to questions about
Election predictions, market manipulation.
and the very nature of political engagement in the digital age.
I feel like we've barely scratched the surface here.
I know, right?
And that's the point of these deep dives, isn't it?
To spark your curiosity and give you the tools to explore these complex issues further.
Exactly.
We're not here to tell you what to think.
But rather to empower you to form your own informed opinions.
Absolutely.
We've presented the different sides of the story.
The potential red flags.
Right.
The thought-provoking questions.
Now it's your turn to dig deeper. Do your own research.
And come to your own conclusions.
Exactly.
We believe in you.
We do.
And remember,
The more informed we all are.
the better equipped we'll be to navigate these uncharted waters.
And ensure that our financial systems and our democratic processes remain fair.
Transparent and truly representative of the people.
Well said.
That's what we're all about here on the Deep Dive.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure exploring this fascinating topic with you.
Likewise, and to all our listeners out